Hi, I'm Maria Theohara Silvello on social media. Welcome back to So Over 50 podcast on Sew Organised Style. Grab a cuppa and relax with us.
One of my favorite adaptive wear company uses the crepe with fabric on it to take their pictures. I think it's wonderful. It's very cute. You can make it look very elegant too.
Our guests today are Lolie and Yvonne. They're promoting for the month of May the Seated Makes Challenge. They'd really love it if you could add some seated photos to your Me Made photos. Their slogan is, just grab a chair and sit on it. Special shout out to the Patreon supporters of this podcast. I'm able to provide So Organised Style podcast to you for free because of their monthly contributions. So Over 50 intersects with all communities. We're a community that is so over ageism. I'm really pleased that through Zoom, I can be here today with Yvonne and Lolie. Let's start with Yvonne. What I've got here is that you've run the Seated Makes Challenge before. Is that correct?
Lolie did it before, and this is the first time I've been involved. It's quite exciting. I think the planets have just aligned at the moment because we're both sort of so passionate about trying to make things easier for people that are sewing for, seated positions. And we've both got a very, very similar outlook in what we're hoping to achieve. I was obviously doing the stuff that I was doing. And then Lolie approached me and said, I really want to run this competition. Do you want to be involved? And it was like, this is fantastic. Well done. Yes, I'd love to be involved. That's how it's come about, really.
Yeah, well, when I saw Yvonne's interest in seated pictures too, I couldn't help but think it would be a perfect match for us to run it together again.
Well, that's good. I'd done a podcast with Lolie 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And so when you and I did the podcast for you earlier this year, I made sure that Lolia's podcast blog post was back at the top of the blog.
Yeah.
So that people could listen to both of your perspectives. So I'm really pleased that you're both working on this challenge together.
It just makes sense, really, because there's so very few of us really out there that are actually sewing regularly, that, are trying to make clothes for seated position or wheelchair friendly clothes. I mean, she's got so much knowledge and she's so far ahead in the journey than I am with her actual fitting and her ideas. She's an absolute whiz at anything technical, whereas I'm still a dinosaur. I'm hoping some of her knowledge will actually rub off and I can progress with my own mates. But it's just lovely to speak to another person that has very similar challenges to myself and very similar outlook. So it is lovely.
Yvonne, can you give us some background about what the Seated Challenge Makes is all about?
Yeah, the Seated Challenge is really just to help anyone who, like myself, uses a wheelchair, or anyone that spends the majority of the time seated, whether that be in an office, any reason really why they're seated more than they're standing. The idea of the challenge is to encourage people to post pictures of their makes sitting down, because I'm sure, as you're aware, if you make a dress, as soon as you sit down, it actually fits you differently to when you're stood up. So that's really what the Seated Makes Challenge is about. It's to get people to post pictures of their makes online so that people who want to see seated pictures can actually see the fit of how an outfit's working when it's sat down. And then they can decide a little bit more informed whether that's a make that they want to try, because otherwise it can be very sort of difficult to try and look at a make and work out whether you think it's actually going to work seated. I'm getting better at it now because I've had a lot of practice. It is challenging to try and work out what's going to work and what isn't.
The point that you've made for anybody who has a role where they're seated most of the time would also be invested in taking photos of when they're seated in their make.
Definitely. I mean, I've had a couple of ladies that have said that they've made dresses for like major events, even a wedding. I had a mother of a bride that spent a lot of time and a lot of money making a perfect outfit that worked really, really well when she was stood up. But when she sat down, it was incredibly tight and uncomfortable. She hadn't realised how much it was actually pulling across the tummy and how awful it looked. And she said, if only I'd actually taken the time to sit down, I would have realised that really wasn't the best outfit to choose.
Welcome, and it's really good to see you, Lolie. I haven't seen you in a couple of years, right?
been a long time. It's nice.
And Yvonne was really good in saying that she was quite excited that you guys could pair up together this year.
It is really exciting for me. It's lovely that we can actually have the opportunity to work together on a project.
It's so much better.
Yvonne's point about if you're in a role where you are seated photos are really important. And I think this challenge is going to help people understand that a bit more.
It's really important that people understand that it isn't just about being, for just people with a disability. It actually helps everybody, the whole sewing community. Garments do change when you sit down, and it's important for everyone to actually appreciate what something looks like when you're seated. So yes, it's going to help the disabled community immensely, but it's also going to help anyone who sews, and it gives them the opportunity to actually see how something looks when they're sat down.
Yvonne, can you run through the simple tips to take seated photos?
Okay, so the challenge, we're asking people to take seated photos. There is an infographic actually up on Instagram at the moment, and that's something that Lolie's prepared that's actually really, really helpful because it shows people exactly the kind of way to take a seated photo that makes it easy for everybody else to actually see the kind of things that we need. Most importantly, it's actually obviously in a chair. So find a seat, sit down, get yourself comfortable. If you're feeling that your legs are dangling, you can always put your feet on a box and then just sit as straight as you can. And obviously try not to have big arms on the chair, and try and put your arms in a position so people can actually see how the fabric is draping, mainly around the tummy area. So just think about the kind of things that people are going to want to actually see, how the fabric's folding, how it's fitting. So it's just putting your arms in a nice comfortable position, not sort of crossed over you, because to put your hands so they're not across your tummy, and then just relax and enjoy it. And any photo is better than no photo. So we're certainly not going to say, oh, we don't like that because you're not sat correctly. We're just really, really grateful for anyone that actually puts a seated photo online. So that's what we'd like. If at all possible, if you can use the hashtag sewn, shown, seated, and then if you can put the pattern and then seated after it. So like Style Art Montana seated. And it just makes it easier then for people to actually see exactly where that pattern is. If you don't want to do that, it's fine. You can just use the challenge hashtag and then we'll still pick it up that way.
So for the tips, I just wanted to mention that if your legs are parallel to the floor, it really helps in seeing better how the garment lays. And also, if you're short and you cannot have your legs parallel to the floor, you can have something to prop your feet up. So it's easier to see how it's gonna be once in a wheelchair or in a chair. And also, I think Yvonne covered every other tip.
I have one question. I'm going to take some seated photos. The chair that I sit on is actually a cube or a stool, and it doesn't have a back on it. Does that matter?
It's better.
So long as you're sat up straight, then it really doesn't matter. In fact, in some ways, it's probably better if you can actually support your back and you're comfortable doing that, then that's perfect. And that's great as well if you're doing someone's taken a sideways on view, because we can really see what's happening to the fabric at the back. The reason you tend not to see many seated photos that are on a stool is because a lot of people that are disabled can't support their back comfortably for any length of time.
Right.
And they need that level of support. But from our perspective, to actually see makes from the back without anything sort of impeding that view, that's really, really helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I use a stool mainly when I take my pictures. I transfer to a stool when I take my pictures, and then I retransfer to my wheelchair so everyone can see better what's happening in the back and on the side.
For someone who is short like me, it's good for me to be seated on that cube. Otherwise, my feet don't land parallel to the floor, and I'd probably have to, as you say, have something to prop up my feet so that you can see the angles of how the fabric drapes for any of my makes when I'm taking a seated photo.
Yeah, so that's probably the best sitting object you could use for yourself. Sorry if that was said weirdly.
In my mind, I'm imagining, one of those plastic milk crates that we have around Australia and covering it with fabric as an alternative way of sitting on something that looks nice. to take a photo of something that I've gone and made. Sorry, I don't mean to be silly, but I'm just thinking if you're short like me and you want to take a seated photo because that's your pledge, be a little bit creative so that at least both Lolie and Yvonne and other people who want some seated photos can see what your make looks like when you're seated or any sort of seat.
We want this to be fun. We don't want it to be a chore for people.
Yeah.
We want them to actually enjoy taking their seated photos and not worry about it, have some fun with it. So yeah, it doesn't matter if it's a milk crate. Go ahead, do it.
Yeah, and one of my favorite adaptive where company uses the crate with fabric on it to take their pictures. I think it's wonderful. It's very cute. You can make it look very elegant too.
Yeah, you could. Or go out to a park and sit on a bench where you can make sure that your feet are parallel on the ground and take a photo.
They're all different sizes and height of benches, so you find your bench and you use it.
I think it's going to be really good. So I can already see on Instagram that there are over 5,000 posts that have hashtag sewn, shown, seated, which is great.
Oh, there's quite a lot from that hashtag. It's why it's hard to find something when you're looking for a specific pattern. It's very hard because there's so many people posting to this hashtag different patterns. So that's why we add the pattern name plus seated to help with finding it. Otherwise, it's a bit like finding a needle in a haystack.
And it's really good to see that people have started to use the hashtags such as sewn, shown, seated, free range slacks. So that's an easy one to find. And things like sewn, shown, seated Cali, because that's been a popular top too.
That's why as well we've asked everyone to tag both myself and Lolie in, that it does make it easier for our competition for us to actually keep a track of everyone, because unfortunately Instagram have made it quite difficult for us because we can't actually sort by date. So running the competition, it is really important that people do remember to tag us in, and then we can actually see their posts and enter them in the competition. That's of course if they want to be in the competition.
Great. Lolie, the month of May is Me Made May, and you're also running the Seated Makes Challenge.
We thought running it at the same time, and I also did a poll in my stories to know if people thought it would make it easier to do both challenges at the same time and gain habits more easily. That's why we're doing it at the same time, because people thought it would be easier to do it once and well than separated and maybe less motivated, because Me Made May is very motivating for people, and I think we took advantage of that.
Is there another incentive as part of the Seated Makes Challenge this month, Lolie?
Oh, yes. We have very nice prizes. We have 7 prizes this year. There will be 7 winners. We have 2 $20 USD gift cards from Twig and Tail. It used to be $50, but they opted to $20 to be sure a whole pattern could be covered in any size.
That's handy.
Yes, it's very nice of them.
Yeah.
They've been so supportive of our challenge, and they've also shared my guide to their storytellers. They also will have some storytellers sharing seated pictures more to mark the challenge. Then we have 2 sets of 2 PDF patterns from So Liberated, who have been very helpful too. And then we have a set of a tailor's ham and a sleeve roll from Just Sew Stuff that we can ship to the US, UK, and Canada. I'm just precising that. Otherwise, if it's someone from somewhere else, then they can cover shipping if they want to, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The set of tailor's ham is made by her, and they're very cute.
Okay.
It's going to be an exciting prize. The fourth one is a $25 gift card from Sophie Hines. So we've got a very exciting lineup of prizes.
Those prizes are going to be drawn around the 1st of June.
Yes.
When we put up our photos during Me Made May, do they have to be new clothes that we've made?
Oh, no. You can take new pictures of old makes but seated, and that works too.
What is the guide that you've come up with, Lolie?
I've made a guide that is like the infographic that I just made that we posted on Instagram, but with more information. and more pictures of do's and don'ts and why, etc. It's available through the link in my biography and my bio on Instagram. You can access it there. It's a PDF.
It's really useful. It's a wonderful guide. For Lolie to produce a guide so well, and fair play to Lolie because English isn't her first language, and she's made this wonderful guide and the pictures are brilliant. And it just makes it so easy for anybody to actually see, because I think it can be quite challenging when you say take seated photos. She just takes all the ambiguity out of it. We know exactly what you need to do, and she's made it done such a good job of it.
Thank you, Yvonne.
Yvonne told us earlier, Lolie, that she's at the start of her sewing journey to make clothing while she's seated, whereas you, Lolie, have got a lot more years of experience, and I've followed you. So the fact that you two have partnered together is a really good way to not only launch this challenge together, but also share that knowledge that you both have.
I was so happy when I found someone else that was interested in the same thing as me. So excited.
It's wonderful because I feel we're good friends now, and we do have an awful lot in common. So it is lovely to actually be able to chat about things that are non-sewing related as well as sewing related. We've got very similar interests and outlooks on life, so it's lovely.
Truly.
Lolie, can you talk us through what people need to do if they want to take part in the prize offer for Seated Makes Challenge?
For the details for winning the prizes are as follows. First of all, you must tag us at Lolie and at the Wheelie Stitcher in your post so that we can be sure to see it. And then you must add hashtag shown seated and Seated Makes Challenge 2024 to your post. And then if you want to win a prize, you have to be following Twig and Tail, So Liberated, Just So Stuff, Lolie, the Wheelie Stitcher, and Sophie Hines, which are the sponsors for this challenge this year to be entered to win. You can add the hashtag pattern name plus seated to optionally, but it's very helpful in finding what we're looking for in the grand scheme of things. So if you can add that, that's very, very appreciated.
And again, if people don't want to enter, they don't need to do any of these things, but it's going to be really important that everyone includes a seated photo, simply uses the hashtag shown seated as a minimum. So that'll be really helpful.
Yes.
Yep. Seated Makes Challenge 2024.
If you don't want to be entered to win prizes, you don't have to. It's more useful for us to follow who participated and everything like that.
Great.
Thank you so much for doing this for us, Maria. We really, really appreciate your support again.
Yes, very much. And it's always nice to chat with you.
It is.
Lolie and Yvonne, thank you for your time today and for all the work that you're committing to doing in the month of May to encourage people to post seated photos of their makes on Instagram. Thank you again. This episode of Sober 50 podcast on Sew Organised Style was produced by me, Maria Theoharis, with permission of Lolie and Yvonne, sound by bensound.com. Many thanks for the ongoing support of the podcast Patreon contributors. Their ongoing support every month enables me to develop these podcasts for free. Make sure you direct message Sandy at Sober50 on Instagram to contribute to the ongoing posts and challenges the team promotes to the community of over 49,000 followers. You too can be a guest editor. You can subscribe to Sew Organised Style Podcast, but with an S, not a Z, on all good podcast apps. Make sure you go back and listen to our free Sober 50 podcast archive on Sew Organised Style Podcast. We look forward to joining you in your sewing room next time. Stay safe, everyone.